My name is Sarah Otto, and I'm on the pastoral team at Ignatius House. As the pandemic began last year, it felt very fitting that I was concluding an Old Testament scripture study with a group of women from my parish. The parallels they felt to the Israelites in exile were striking. The Israelites were away from the temple, which was so important to their religious identity as our own churches were closing. They were uprooted from their home, as so many of the women felt disconnected from their sense of a village. As we trudged through a lot of depressing texts, I was surprisingly moved by this passage in Jeremiah chapter 29, which was a message of hope for the Israelites and a message of hope still for us in this time. I had been very familiar with one line from Jeremiah 29 since childhood. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. My mom made bookmarks with this verse for me. It was on youth group retreat shirts, and it was the text my mom put on my high school graduation announcement that she designed and sent to all our friends and family. Those words were filled with comforting optimism for a good Catholic girl heading off to college. But at the time, I didn't know those words were spoken to the Israelites in the midst of the Babylonian exile, in the midst of desolation and despair. And what I certainly didn't know was the line immediately before. Only after 70 years have elapsed for Babylon will I deal with you and fulfill my promise and bring you back to this place. 70 years. Where is the hopeful future in that? Most of the people exiled would be dead before God's promise came to fruition. God's plan might still be at work, but their plans most certainly had to shift. Pope Francis had already begun writing Fratelli Tutti when the COVID-19 pandemic unexpectedly erupted, exposing our false securities, akin, I imagine, to the false securities the Israelites were living under pre-exilic times. The first chapter is an incredibly honest look at the distortions in our world today, aptly entitled Dark Clouds Over a Dark World. One of the effects being a throwaway world in which people are no longer valued if they don't have use, and indifference to all kinds of waste, discarding people, discarding food in a world where there is so much hunger. At the end of this chapter, however, he calls us back to a place of hope and reminds us that hope works independently of our circumstances and historical conditioning. And I think Isaiah was calling the Israelites to that same sense of hope in exile. Circumstances may not be what you desire, but for lack of better words, he tells them to move on. Stop reminiscing of the past or daydreaming about the future and be in the present. Set roots. Foster friendships. Learn more about yourself. Find the good in this seemingly transitional place. For upon its welfare, your own depends. Despite these dark clouds, Pope Francis says God continues to sow abundant seeds of goodness in our human family. But we have the responsibility to also plant, to pray for our communities, to be invested in the people there, those we love, those we disagree with, those we don't even know. For upon their welfare, our own depends. Let us be a people of hope. Let us plant seeds of justice, mercy, and truth. Let us deepen our relationships with one another. And let us recognize that we are all part of one family.